Hey, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Tech Fusion, GPUs and beyond. And this episode is specifically very focused on the AI, GPU, and beyond. In this episode, we are going to speak about the GPUs. The whole cycle of GPU starts from data centers. And today, I have Russ with me, who is the VP of Sales for Exabits. And he's going to tell us the whole story around how GPUs are procured and how they are put on to different racks, different machines, how they are even scaled for different companies so that we can use ChatGPT, we can use Claude, we can use different n number of Llama open source models, and where do they run? Russ, welcome to the show, and so glad to have you over here.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here and talk about AI compute. I was in Token 2049 last week, and there was a lot of buzz about AI compute. Definitely a great topic, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Amazing. Glad to have you. And just to put you everybody in context, me and Russ have been speaking for past 10 minutes about AI compute and how the AI compute has 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 own set of challenges because as you see that once you speak about AI compute, there are two different forms of AI compute that is there right now. One is centralized and one is decentralized. And as companies who are focused on decentralization, our focus is to build that. But what do you feel, Russ, are the major challenges for a decentralized compute company versus a centralized company in today's world? Like, what are the major blockers which comes to day in that?
Yeah, so I can start with a little bit about, the current state of GPU computing, right? And why we're here, right? The computational complexity of state-of-the-art AI is like doubling every 3 or 4 months, like, or Moore's law type of thing. And we see compute outpacing demand by 2x to 3x. So it's going to be more scarce. It's going to be a bigger need. So the demand for AI is growing, but we have a problem today, right? It's 70% of the GPUs are owned and controlled by the big three: Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. And then you also have Oracle and Cloud in there. So what happens with that is it's centralized, it's controlled by these big cloud providers. And when you have big cloud providers, that equals big price, right? They're going to charge a premium. There's long wait times. So companies that are trying to up and come and do AI development, and they go to Amazon and say, "Hey, I need GPUs." It's going to be, "Hey, okay, it's going to take several weeks," and that could be a blocker. The lack of commitments. Some of these companies need short-term access to GPUs. They're project-based. They need GPUs for 8, 12 weeks, and the big companies want to sign one-year contracts. The lack of flexibility. So these are the things today that are inhibiting the AI ML development growth of the emerging tech, especially in the Web3 space. So now you're seeing the emergence um, of more GPU compute, and while that's a good thing, it also has its challenges. So we hear about distributed computing, decentralized computing, and a lot of companies coming in. But then we sometimes get the opposite challenge where they're building GPU networks that don't have SLAs with poor reliability. They're adding unverified nodes. The concept of GPU by community is fantastic, but we have to make sure those nodes get verified. You had a lot of local presence. So there's a lot of things in here that the state of the AI compute needs a lot of work. It's getting better, but the big players and the small players, there's definitely room for improvement.
And I think this really reminds me there is a team which is building something similar, very similar to Cursor, and Piano is the name of the team. And they required H100 and they were actually trying to access it. Like they had a timing for months, like it could take months to get access to H100. And apparently, we met them in Bangalore and like they got the access in minutes.
Yeah.
So I feel this big challenge of getting the GPUs straight out of like the bare metal, and how do you access it, like that really proves out very easy in decentralized compute. And even the
Yeah.
pricing, what you said, right? Because these pricings are, so as what I'm aware, that any big four company or any big three companies, they give you the credits to do that. They
Yeah.
have a lock in onto that. So if you use those credits, let's say you utilize 100K, you have to lock in your 200K. Like you have to make sure that you bill them for next 1 year, then only you can utilize that 200K. So you're just locked in into a single vendor
And
for.
there's a problem with that. So they give you the 100K, and Amazon and GCP do the same thing. They give you the 100K, but then they tell you an A100 costs $8 an hour. So at the time, you're like, it doesn't matter because I'm getting it for free.
Yeah.
But when that 100K is consumed and you're still locked in, all of a sudden you're paying an exorbitant amount for those GPUs. And in the end, you're kind of like, so I talked to a lot of customers who were coming off those contracts, and they're like, hey, like I have to get out of here. Other thing about, you said they got access to H100s immediately. Like Exabits and Fear and other these companies is a lot of what we're providing is the ability to self provision, right? If you're a very, very savvy customer, you have the ability to go on there and build a cluster yourself and use the technologies. And it's getting better, right? Some of that has limitations, but as we make our networks more mature, you're going to be able to build your own clusters and have things like Kubernetes on there and RAID network and all those things. So you're right. So you're talking about instant access to GPUs, and not only that, it's not the instant access. It's like I'm going to use the GPUs and I'm going to train a model for 12 weeks, and the minute you're done, you're going to release that cluster. You're done paying, right? So
The accessibility and composability really adds to
yeah,
it, right?
you're
Like
not going to keep
for
paying.
any product out there.
You're not
Yeah.
going to keep paying for something that is idle. So not every project is static based. There are dynamic needs for GPUs. So we're helping do that.
But coherently, when I speak about that, the composability and accessibility is amazing with decentralized compute. But what happens when these companies try to utilize, or specifically on decentralized compute platforms, this you get it out of the box, which is amazing. But the things you don't get is the robustness and sustainability. So how come companies are trying to tackle that? And as you speak to so many customers, like how do you tackle those questions, like how robust it is or how sustainable it is to keep on building on a decentralized compute
Yeah,
versus a centralized
sure.
partner?
Yeah. So, you'll hear all these companies tell you we have 800,000, we have a million GPUs. And it's funny is it's all the same GPUs because everybody's putting the GPUs in community. So everybody who has got access to that pool says, I have a million GPUs. I have a million GPUs. I have a million GPUs. But a lot of times it's the same GPUs. Um, and then you're worried about where are they coming from? Who owns them? Like are they verified? So with Exabits, we're a little bit different. Like we don't build our GPUs from community. Our GPUs are managed, owned, maintained by us. So we did an event at Token 2049. We shipped 4 H100 servers to Singapore. We got together with Rack Central, a data center provider, in EMC, and we built a GPU cluster, a GPU farm in Singapore. And our team, the Exhibits teams, we are the ones who install the rack. We're the ones who monitor the rack. We're the ones who maintain it and operate it. And then so we have our hands on all of our GPU farms all over the world. So we know we're the guys doing it. So A, we're accountable for it. And then B, we have our own technology that we apply that does things like, acceleration so that your GPUs are more efficient. You're getting more for your money. And then, we're the ones who can manage the stability, right? We offer an SLA with our GPUs. So that whole event was all about providing transparency to the community that we maintain, operate our own GPUs, And
It's
so,
like Subway, right? Like Subway says
yeah,
we bake our own bread. I mean,
yeah, we
Exabits
bake
team is
our
like
own
we
bread. Like,
install our own GPUs.
see the ingredients. We know what's going in there, right? We're not getting something off the shelf and just guessing. So that's a big differentiator. The other thing is we talked about is we talked about and we're I'm going to say we're growing responsibly. So we talked about how a lot of these hyperscalers and you'll hear, hey, we just invested $200 million to buy all of these H100, and now we have 20,000. Well, now they have that big. Now they're burdened with that cost on the balance sheet. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to overcharge because they feel the need to recoup that investment. So they spent, hundreds of millions of dollars. Now they have to go out and utilize that. So there's pressure, and I don't feel it's a responsible approach. So what at Exhibits, what we do is we're going to build a little bit more slowly, a little bit more cautiously. I don't want to have a million GPUs and be at 4% utilization. I'd rather have 80,000 GPUs and be at 60% utilization or higher. So my goal is to drive my utilization of my network up and then go out and then procure more hardware and kind of be a little bit more responsible. There's a risk in that. If I get a big customer that comes along, that wants, hundreds of GPUs, I'm going to have it, but then I'm going to have to rush to build out. But that's what we're good at. Exabits is also a reseller for Dell, Supermicro, and HPE. So I can add hardware to my platform in a week. I can add, dozens of servers. So I think it's a more responsible build out than having millions of GPUs and very low utilization.
And we are also doing something very similar to tackle this, especially for data centers. Like because we have been partnering, like foundationally, we are speaking to exhibits as well. And something which we are doing that is because the utilization. I think one of the biggest pain points for data center is utilization.
Yep.
At one point of time, if you have the hardware and you have the hardware with you, it's plugged in, and you're already paying for such huge amount of opex on it, and such huge amount of, like, we know, like, as somebody who is working closely with all of these data centers, we understand the opex are crazy for these. Like if I say
Yeah.
an H100, or if I say A6000s, like it can go to a lot. And the utilization is something where things go are bottlenecked right now. Like
Yeah.
when I say that there are different AI companies, everybody's saying that everybody needs CPUs, but there are data centers which are fairly empty, right? Nobody's utilizing them. You see that there are so many based in Europe, in US. And what I like about, even about Exabits, is that you only scale as per the use, and that's
Yeah.
very important. And what we are trying to tackle is that if there are things have been unutilized till now, so Spheron can actually enable you to access all of underutilized GPUs.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of Spheron, is that we are trying to connect as many underutilized GPUs or CPUs or any compute power. There is something I'll tell you about. It's called Fizz So the beauty of Fizz is that you can actually connect your MacBook uh, or your Windows system or your Linux system on a network for simpler workloads, and it's called a Fizz So I really love, but you have to clear my stance on, is, do you really think that, are there AI certified, or like there are AI ready data centers? Like is there a thing called AI ready data
Yeah,
centers?
there is. There definitely is. The first is power, right? The GPUs drive tremendous power, very expensive. So the first thing people ask is like, how many megawatts is your data center, right? Can you physically have the power to support and drive these GPUs? And then, they're designed for parallel processing and high throughput, high bandwidth memory, high speed networking, right? Low latency, right? So it's no good if your data center has all these GPUs, but it's connected by a 10 gigabyte network, right? So you have to have the throughput to those data centers actually has to be there, right? They have to be optimized to scale rapidly. So you can't just have like, okay, we're going to go ahead and put our stuff in this data center, and like the data center is 99% full. Like it has to be able to scale rapidly and put more stuff in. Then there's things like the cooling. Not only do these things require a lot of heat, man, they run hot. It's almost like you're in a data center. It's like it's like putting your hands up to a fireplace. Oh, this is nice and toasty. You have to be able to have liquid cooling, immersion cooling, these data centers. So there are definite things they have to be able to run GPUs, and not all of them are equipped like that. I used to work in the telecom industry, and data centers used to do a lot of telephony ports, right? Very different. Today, to run these GPUs, you have to have high bandwidth, cooling, power, definitely be able to do that.
And even the requirements, like for example, if a customer is coming to Spheron or Exhibits, the requirements can be broad, right? Like it should be InfiniBand, because one H100 cannot be similar to the other H100, because there are a lot of factors in play
Yeah.
when it actually comes to actually leasing out a machine. But what are the things which Exhibits really care about? Like, let's say if my customer is leasing out a machine, an H100, what are the things you guys generally see out or look out,
So
like, okay, it should be?
we've done some proprietary technology that makes some of our, so we call it accelerating. Accelerating the GPUs for the AI workloads, maximizing performance, so that 1-800 is not equal. Like, everybody wants to get the maximum amount of things like tokens per second out of their GPUs, the maximum amount of compute. So we're doing that, and then we have our own technology for stabilizing clusters, right? So we need to make sure that clusters are up and running. And then we pay careful attention to things like, NVLink and InfiniBand. And then I'm going to take it one step further. Like, our goal is to be a enterprise slash Web 2 and Web 3 provider. I don't want to just work with the Web 3. The big money is in enterprises that are going to consume lots of GPUs. So my data center has to be SOC 2 compliant. A lot of these
Yeah,
companies are putting sensitive data in the GPUs to build models. So
exactly.
Exabits is working with SOC 2 compliant data centers. So the acceleration, the stabilization, the security, those are definitely things that we pay attention to. And I'm going to say the responsiveness. So everybody wants to do, they want to kick the tires a little bit before they do that. And I can't tell you how many times, in just my past life at many companies come in, they do a POC, and you're not attentive, the POC fails, and the company just walks. So at Exhibits, we're doing POCs, and I told my team, white glove support, right? When they do a POC, you have to give them the confidence that the architecture is stable, the architecture works, the integration works, and most importantly, if there is an issue, that you're there to help them, right? And it could be simple things like it could be something simple like a default parameter maybe is one way or another. You open it up, but they want to know that you're going to be there, that you're going to have a live person to troubleshoot with them. So that support and that
And
hands on is really, it's really important for me as a salesperson to say my customers have to feel like they're not going to be abandoned. So that's something I'm very, very
but that is
fast.
something which is mostly with Web 2 customers, because these are two
Yep,
parallel worlds which we are speaking of right now, right? Because they tend to collide on compute, and we get to
yep,
know, like, compute is some sort of currency which is already out there.
yeah.
But is it something like?
Even the Web 3 customers, they're doing, sometimes they're doing some wonky things, right? And they we get into like, you're doing what? And I'm creating a mesh network. I want to use that. Do you have, are you using this Kubernetes or this CUDA flow? We have this version. So sometimes they're doing something that's a little bit different, and they're very savvy, and a lot of them can
Yeah.
self-serve, but they don't require a lot of TLC, but something they just need a little bit of help. Even on the Web 3 side, you got to support your customers.
But yeah, I think support is something which is I feel which is a fuel of any kind of service which you are providing. And
Yeah,
either, like, even at Spheron, like, we take support as one of the most important pillar for any compute company out there. Because if anybody goes and lease out some machine and they're like, okay, I suppose that it would happen like this, and now that they are in your Discord, they're asking questions. And I feel documentation and things like support really makes a project out there. Like, are they going to
Yeah.
make it, or are they not going to make it? People generally don't understand. If you don't have a great support, you're not going to make it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that is something which comes out as one of the things which we really feel. But I feel these two segments of web 2 and web 3, and two different customer cycles,
Very
and
much.
trying to work on similar stuff which is on AI. So how does, like, your tokenization, GPU tokenization of Exabits, how does that comes into play for the former and for the later as well? Like, how do you guys do that?
So the way we look at tokenization, and there's a couple of good models, right? We've seen tokenization for in the community to get community put their GPUs on a network. What Exabits looks at as tokenization for let's say investing in compute, right? So we've have the view of we're really good at building data centers and building servers, right? So we'd like to see VCs and people invest in compute, then Exabits manages that compute. So maybe there's a system where they get token rewards for investing in the compute and having Exabits manage it. And so by doing that, then our cost of compute becomes lower. Could also be even in the data center, right? Can we incent a particular data center with tokenomics to offer lower cost power, those types of things? But so our view is tokenomics or token into the companies to invest in the actual physical GPUs and the infrastructure that we can monetize for them. So if they buy the GPUs, we're going to manage them. We can monetize it for them, and it makes our network a lot larger.
Oh, dude, this is a very interesting play. So, like, even Web3 companies comes as a foundation. They can do that. They can come up to Exhibits and ask them to take care of their physical infrastructure. Like, is it possible
Well,
to do it from their
we're
governance?
looking for them to actually invest in infrastructure that we manage and own.
Yeah,
So in other words, invest in an H100 server, right? So it's more, and we don't have a token today, but these are the
yeah.
things that we're exploring. Where do we want tokenomics to go? And we want it to be in the investment in physical infrastructure that becomes part of our network.
So let's
And
take an example
typically,
of
typically it's
Spheron
more
coming
like
to Exhibits
yeah, it's
as a
more like venture
foundation.
capitalists. It would be more like VCs coming to us and saying,
Okay.
"Hey, we're going to invest in millions of dollars in building and buying H100 servers, and in reward, they might get some tokens." So these are things we're exploring, but we've not done quite yet.
And
So
also
we'll
the
continue.
OpEx, like, because it is something which physical hardware which gets utilized, you
Yes.
there is also an upside on actually renting out those machines at an X price. Yet it
Yeah.
is lower than that, but
Yeah.
you get, like, there are, the incentive is that it can be to incentive is tokenized, and also you get paid for being
Yeah.
utilized. Like, is that the
Absolutely.
case here?
Yeah,
Okay, this
so
is
as those
pretty
machines
interesting.
get
Yeah,
utilized, yeah,
yeah,
as
yeah.
as the machine gets utilized, they're earning money. We're sharing in that because we're monitoring, maintaining, and managing it. So there's a share in that. But yeah, that's pretty much the concept.
Amazing. And as for working with decentralized compute partners, like even Spheron, so what are the things which Exhibit's top priority is when you choose that, okay, this is the decentralized compute partner that is going to work with us in longer term? Like, these guys have been renting out machines, we are going to connect our machines to them. And because this is an important play even for Web3
Right.
companies today, is to understand what kind of data centers even decentralized compute are working upon. As everybody
Yeah.
said that we have 1 million GPUs, right? But if we say that we have 10,000 GPUs, which is from
Yeah.
Exhibits, it makes
So
more
exhibits.
cadence. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So Exabits, we do work with a lot of those cloud providers. We provide GPUs to Spheron, to Akash, to Aether, to IONET, Netmine, whatever. So we're definitely working with a lot of those providers, and we want to because we believe in the model of decentralized and distributed compute. So we want to support those partners because maybe they have more reach or different customer segments, right? It's kind of like you think about, they're almost like they're resellers for Exabits. In terms of choosing whether we do or don't, um, we're less likely to take our servers and just rent and put them on the network and sit idle, right? Because then they're not earning. So there's people that are saying, I'll take my GPUs, I'll throw them on the network, and they'll be idle. We may do that, but I more likely want to be where a customer comes to me and says, hey, I need 64 H100s, and we put them on and they're utilized. So I'm more about utilization, rather than just throwing my GPUs on there and waiting, because that costs me money, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm paying for those GPUs, I'm paying for the power, I'm paying for the space. And then when I work with these customers, I want to feel confident that um, they're it's kind of like we're still in the game. So what I don't want to do is lease to a customer, and then a customer leases to an end client and then doesn't support them properly, or does some I don't want anything negative coming back. So I want to feel like the entire ecosystem from Exabits through partner to end customer is maintained very well, and well supported.
Yeah, interestingly enough, like I want to tell about you about the tiering system what we have been doing. So
Yep.
as you see that, like, there are so many customers who want to use GPUs out there, and they have a lot of questions around security, privacy, and bandwidth. A lot of questions, because once you are going to buy out something as a user, you can have 1,000 questions, and we have to
Yep.
answer that. So what we are trying to do is that we are tiring every data center or any type of GPUs that is on our network. So let's say today Russ connects his own H100 onto the network, and there are multiple factors like liveness and how many times like the it is active on the network, and how many workload it has taken, or stuff like that, like, which is
So
definitely
each
in
of
a.
your GPUs gets a score, and then people can see
Yes,
that,
exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
like your Uber driver score, right?
Yes, exactly. And you can go ahead and you can choose, like, with more better tier providers onto the network, and you can go ahead and you can select that. What
Yeah.
what it truly brings on to the network, and what it truly brings on is the trust that you have built so far. Let's say
Yes.
Exabits providers have built the trust, like their utilization are 100% because
Yeah.
of the trust they have built with the customer. And
Yeah.
the whole segment of support is taken care by us. So let's say that we are the
Yeah.
ones who act as a POC between uh like between the end user
Yeah.
and you guys. So
Yeah.
the reason we came up with Spheron, which is a very crucial problem, what we have seen is that because of the users are sometimes very specific of their needs, and sometimes they are very broad of their needs, like give me 10 H100s for 2 days, right? So it becomes kind of like, it is to maintain such kind of marketplace, or to maintain such kind of aggregation into the marketplace,
Yeah.
we are really working to eradicate this segment where you do not you cannot go ahead and you can just lease out any like shady looking uh, and you can find those things, right? I
Yeah.
think you have been into the business longer than me, but you can definitely find those at which comes at cheap rates at like
Yeah.
$2 an
Early
hour.
on,
And
there was a lot of excitement and it decentralized, and a lot of people wanted to put your GPUs on the network and they wanted to earn. The tokenomics of giving token to people to put their GPUs on the network was an amazing way to get to build out the community. But then you just got a lot of GPUs on the network that were unverified, and so I think there's a lot of work now to go back and clean that up. You're right. The scoring mechanism that you're using, other companies use that as well too, and I think it's important so that if your network's gonna drop and it's gonna slash in your GPUs, then you're not going to pick up, and the speed and the performance of all those things can be rated. You're right. So then your community starts to get scored, and you start to build a community of the lower quality ones. They fall off the network, and then you're left with a really good network of high quality GPUs.
exactly. And that's the whole idea of working with making decentralized compute more of a robust option for everybody, because like I think because of serious partners like Exabit, serious partners
Yeah.
like us, we are trying to regain the momentum on
Yeah.
decentralized compute, which is actually robust and which is actually like which can be trusted out right out of the box and
Yeah.
also composable. Like there is so much of preaching and there is so much of like I don't know, fluff that goes out into the industry, and we understand because there are tokenomics and there is tokens involved, and everybody has to speak out something that how amazingly they are changing the world. But there
And
are
decentralization also has to be distributed, right? And when I say that is you have certain restrictions, like if you're working in the EU and you're working with an enterprise customer, because of GDPR, they're only going to want GPUs from the European community, right? So you have to make sure you have a decentralized European community. If you're working in the US, a lot of those companies will insist their GPUs are in the US or North America. And the same thing works with, data centers and like in Hong Kong and China, that's sort of mainly the China market. And then, Asia, we put our data center in Singapore because Singapore is widely accepted as a community for all of like Southeast Asia and Asia. So you have to also distribute your GPUs because you do have people who, even though they like to decentralize, they might be more region specific or have more regional requirements.
exactly. And like in terms of any type of regulation that goes through, like enterprise clients are somewhat like they move the needle, right? And those
Yeah.
are very much required for most of the people who are building into this space to potentially understand why this is important and how important this is. And even for like we are trying to also work on things like utilizing your own compute, like I just told you about. There is something, can I show you a sneak peek or something which
Yeah.
is like my team will kill me for this, but like I want to go ahead and show if I can, yeah. So can you see my screen?
I
Like,
can. Yes.
yeah, so this shows out you can just go ahead and you can connect your fizz node on top of Spheron, and you can connect your like if you're running a Mac, you can just go ahead and you can uh, connect it to the Spheron network, and it's fairly very easy to do that.
Hmm.
Like this is something which we have been working under the hood, and my team is going to release
The self
it pretty
provisioning
soon.
is
Yeah,
fantastic, and that's what's great in this space.
so these are the kind of innovation which allows decentralized compute, right? Like there
Yeah.
are people who have been working on it, but we are pretty sure that we actually work on robust things. I hope my marketing team hasn't seen this yet, like,
Yeah.
but I wanted to give a
So
sneak
so
peek of.
what? So one thing I saw that was interesting, and I had this conversation with somebody in Dubai that I'm looking at your thing, and someone's going to solve this. They're working on this for people who are Mac users and they want to play certain games that require GPUs.
Yeah.
Some of those Mac users can't play those games. So
Oh,
I've,
tell
I've
me
seen
about it.
companies trying to work where if you have a Mac platform, you can
Yeah,
utilize a GPU in the cloud to play those games. So it's gonna this decentralization is gonna solve some problems that are just very unique today. So, the latency and all those things will factor into all that. But it's really, really cool how those things are coming into play.
absolutely. So, Russ, what do you think are the next steps for Exabits? Like, as a company, what Exabits think what would happen in next 6 months? What would happen in next
Yeah.
2 years? Like, and how you guys are prepping up for the next hopeful bull run soon?
So there's short term and long term things. So in the short term, we definitely want to continue to build out our global presence. Like, we want to make sure we have multiple places in Europe and in Asia, in North America, potentially South America. So we're going to continue to look at areas to invest in GPU build out. That's one thing. And then how do we make our GPUs better for people? So one of the things working on is auto scaling, and that is something that all of the GPU providers are kind of rushing to work on, and it's really important because when you look at people who provision GPUs, they end up having to, well, I don't know how many GPUs I need. I think I need 16, but I'm not sure. I'm going to provision 24, and then I have a long contract, so you end up paying for this capacity that you're not using, and it's very expensive. What they'd rather do is they'd rather buy 16 GPUs, and if they're doing a model or an inferencing or something or generating something and they spike, they'd rather have the system automatically go pick up two GPUs for the spike and then drop them. And they'll even pay a premium to do that. But auto scaling is something that everybody really wants because they don't want to have to manually provision clusters.
Yeah.
They want the software to provision the GPUs, and they want that to be a really true dynamic pay as you go. So Exabits, we are definitely driving hard to improving that auto scaling. And then there's, I'm going to call it, those are the short term things. And then there's moving up the stack. So today, Exabits, we are focused really on providing the best hardware layer. But we have a lot of companies come to us and say, hey, we want an inferencing platform, or we want an open source platform for data collection, right? So there's a whole, I'm going to call it a software layer on top of the hardware layer. And that's some place where we want to eventually get into. So companies can come to us and say, oh, we have the hardware, we have the auto scaling, we have the inferencing platform, just bring your project and you can do that. So basically improving the stack, so that the application layers, they don't have to worry about that. So they just bring the application, the software layers there. So those are things where we want to even move to in the future. So the first is solving, the auto scaling, the dynamic nature, the build out of the hardware, and then getting to the point where we can provide a better software layer for our customers.
And like in percentage of people who are actually like in, what do you feel is the higher percentage of people who are inferencing on top of exhibits, who are data training, who are data modeling? Like, is there any specific amount of people like who utilize it? Because there
I,
can be
I
short leases and there can be long, but what is the,
Yeah,
like, if
it's probably a good mix of both right now. I mean, we're definitely working with people doing inferencing, generative AI, modeling, and I couldn't put my figure to say, hey, it's 50% inferencing or it's 50% Gen AI or 30% model or is even gaming, right? Hard for me to say right now, and sometimes we may not know, right? So if I'm working with an emerging cloud provider, right? I may not know who their customer is, right? I'm just told, hey, we
exactly.
need 64 A100s, and we lease it to them, and their end customers who they're working with. So sometimes I don't know. The goal is to obviously be agnostic to all of those. And then I come from the enterprise space. There's a whole, the world even gets bigger. Like there's a lot going on with AI ML in healthcare. There's a lot of modeling for diagnosis and analysis and computer vision for things like X-rays and MRIs. But to do that, you actually have to be HIPAA compliant. So
Yeah.
as we get our software and our data centers more mature and more secure, there's going to be a lot more things we can do. That's probably another thing that's a little bit of a way out to get something like a HIPAA compliancy. But those healthcare companies, they're the ones like they're stuck. They have to go to Amazon and Google and pay those exorbitant because the small providers, they're months, years away from having HIPAA compliancy. So that's another area where
Is
potentially
compliance a big blocker for decentralized compute companies right now? Do you
It,
think that?
it is. They're like, anybody who puts their GPU on the network is obviously
Yeah.
not SOC 2 compliant. So immediately you have a limited use case for that, or a certain robustness, or and latency as well too, right? If you're going to start building a network of GPUs all over the place, and they're not verified, or you don't know where they are, right? A gamer puts their GPU on the network. Like, what's that network to that gamer's GPU? Is it guaranteed? So yeah, so the compliancy, those types of things are still challenges in the decentralized world.
And on a sunny day, like, do you really feel that if not being compliant to these regulation bodies, are decentralized compute companies losing on a lot of business?
Um, yeah, they are. I mean, I have been in here where I have talked to a healthcare company that had a huge need, and I basically cried because they had hundreds of GPUs I wanted to use. I couldn't serve them, and I used to work for a company called Shape that does AI data for healthcare, and there's hundreds of use cases for that, and it's a whole market I can't play in. So I do,
Wow.
and I'm wondering, if I'm in the SOC 2 compliance and HIPAA world, I'm wondering if you get to the point where individual data center owners, or like, people who own their own GPUs, if there's a way they can't go out and self-certify, so that, I
Yeah.
might be, maybe I'm a crypto miner, and I have, racks and farms of GPUs, how I can get my own certification, my own compliance, so now all of a sudden my GPUs have a larger use in the network.
Exactly, like, to bridge that gap would be amazing, to
Yes.
bridge that gap
Yeah.
between data centers and actual requirement for these, because we, we have been closely studying all of, like, for example, if you're a company, if you have just raised $1 million, okay, and that can be a very huge amount in India, and that can be significant amount in US. The 30% of your funding actually goes to either Amazon, GCP, or Azure.
It goes to compute.
And
I used to
yeah,
see so many companies. So when I was working with a lot of AI ML companies, they needed two things. They needed training data to build their models. They needed compute. And it was often they struggled because the training data was expensive too, the compute, and it compromised their ability to build models and tune and train models. You're 100% right. A lot of it goes to the compute.
exactly. So we feel like there is a very large market to actually drown in and start leveraging this decentralized compute as a whole. And I feel this whole segment is very collaborative, because there
Yes.
can be so much infrastructure. Like, there should be no sense of, because every time we have every partner which is also decentralized compute and stuff like that, we always say that this whole segment is very, because everybody is trying to crack into the actual need, and
Yeah.
once possibly to create this trust cycle with the user, because
Yeah.
we haven't reached there as like, everybody uh, in this industry is trying to reach over there. So coming to the last question of this segment, so it's GPU, AI, and beyond, right? So this beyond is something more of, it's philosophical. Like, what do you think the world would be, the GPU world or the whole world itself? Because we have been seeing LLMs pretty spacing up so dearly with every kinds of works today, and now it can reason as well. Like, Ovan just came up with a new model where it can start reasoning as well, and which has,
I,
I don't know
I think
which.
the future is going to see, what I'm hoping, uninhibited access to compute, right, at all levels, right. So today, we all know who the emerging marketplace providers are, and they're building out, and they're building the software, and they're getting better. So I think companies are going to have they're going to have choices, right, and with choice comes competition, comes lower pricing. And I think they're going to have options, right? Oh, I need SOC 2 compliance. I can go to these companies, but I have choices. I don't need it. I can get a differentiated service. So I think you're going to see tiers of service that are going to be very nice. I think you're going to have multiple choices. I think you're going to have platforms. I think you're going to get to the point where companies have to worry less about how they're going to find compute, how they're going to get access to it, and they're going to worry more about, let me just focus on my application that I'm doing, and I'm going to be able to do the compute piece. So Um, that's what I really think. I think it's going to be uninhibited access to GPUs at better pricing that's going to unblock AI/ML development.
Amazing. Amazing. And Russ, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. Somebody who
Absolutely.
is on ground, who actually knows the cycle of GPUs, and amazing to see how you look at the future and how Exabit looks at the future ahead. And
Yeah,
we
I've been
hope,
on the sides of people and companies that need the GPUs, and then on the side of, and that's kind of how I got involved, and then on the side of
yeah.
supplying them. So I understand the
So
sensitivities
demand
and the
and
needs.
supply.
Yes. Yeah.
So amazing to have you today, like, and it was pleasure to everybody to actually educate on how things really goes down on a day-to-day basis and what are things at the trenches of the GPU compute world. And thank you so much for being here today, Ras. It was absolute pleasure to have you. Until our next episode, and hopefully we'll do a partnership like announcement soon with Exhibits 2. We are just rolling
Absolutely.
out so many.
Absolutely. We look
So
forward to working
yeah,
together. Yeah.
have a good